New York cannabis regulators face another lawsuit over equity goals, you guys. That's right. A white male-owned company filed a lawsuit against the New York Office of Cannabis Management, arguing that the state regulators are discriminating against its based on race and gender. The plaintiffs claim that they were ranked 2,042 in a hierarchy of about 2,200 operationally ready applicants in a list published by the state's cannabis regulators on January 12th, and that their low priority in the licensing process is a violation of their federal civil rights. The company's complaint states that the Cannabis Control Board is made up of all minorities and women with no white men represented. Last year, the state Supreme Court blocked the office from issuing new cannabis licenses after 4 veterans sued. The injunction has since been lifted, and a company that applied to operate a marijuana store in New York failed to qualify because one of its owners, Kenneth Gay, lacked a significant New York State presence. Gay has a past marijuana conviction in Michigan, and New York implemented rules to ensure that the first adult use storefronts were run by individuals with no ties to the state, but later resumed its controversial licensing program despite the constitutional issues that it had been raised. And Valencia's AG's lawsuit claims that the state Office of Cannabis Management intentionally discriminated against the plaintiff and other white men, you guys. New York, man, oh man, oh man. You guys just don't ever know when to stop. What do you guys think about this? New York discriminating against white guys in cannabis.
Well, now.
You first, Luke. You first, Luke.
Okay, so let me start by saying social equity and social justice have nothing to do with color. Let me just say that. Anybody can. That doesn't mean that the communities that were overpoliced, like Black and brown communities, were not overpoliced in relation to their white counterparts. That absolutely is true. But what I'm saying is that a poor Jewish person could live in a certain neighborhood. A older white guy could have a cannabis conviction. There's multiple situational things that can make somebody qualify for these social equity things. So I just wanted to kind of say that grandly before we get into like the whole race and color situation going on in New York. This is basically the affirmative action argument with new words placed in certain spots. That's it. It's the same thing. It's the same legal arguments that were brought before the Supreme Court in regard to college tuition or college applications. So this is just a philosophy, right? This is just, if you think that certain people didn't have opportunities and had a more difficult time achieving the same level of achievement as other people, then you will agree that this is something that needs to be fixed. If you think that Black and brown and Asian people or Black and brown and purple people are underrepresented in a certain institution or a certain industry, and things need to be done to make sure that that playing field is even, then that is your prerogative to feel like that. Two different schools of thought, right? And I'm not going to call either one wrong, but you are going to be on one of two sides on that. Now, in this New York situation, I mean, it's hard for me to get behind any individual. I don't care what color you are, that you come in and you say, hey, I shouldn't be pushed down on the priority scale over somebody who actually had to sacrifice and pay a price for us to be where we're at, and for you to even have that argument. So that's what my feelings are on it. I'll kick it back to you guys.
Go for it, Yarrow.
I'd love to chime in on this. I mean, you're talking to two white guys who were both justice involved and who both had to eat ramen in a yellow jumpsuit and smell other people's farts. So we come with some experience that I think is relevant to this particular conversation. So if we use that criteria of justice involved, and we know the Black and brown communities were disproportionately impacted against, there is a natural, I think, line of logic that you could say even just using that justice involved criteria means there's going to be 4 to 5 times more black and brown people who got caught up in the criminal justice system as a result of that disproportionate enforcement in those communities. I think that's a good way of looking at it. The thing is this, right? This should come as no surprise to anybody. We have known since the beginning of cannabis social equity policy that we needed to come up with ways to write these criteria that were not gender or race-based, not because we didn't want to give a leg up for certain communities that were being disproportionately impacted, but specifically because of what my brother Luke said in respects to affirmative action and the way that affirmative action was rolled back through the courts because of lawsuits such as this, because affirmative action was written in a way that was not going to be defensible when it eventually got ruled upon, right? And so that's why we've come up with disproportionately impacted areas. That's why we've tried to take the impacts of prohibition instead of the descriptors of the communities that were most impacted and come up with these criteria. So this lawsuit is just a matter of time, and anybody who has ever looked at public policy knew that this was coming. And there's been a robust debate around this month, especially on the heels of Martin Luther King's Day. That there's no question that black and brown communities were more impacted. But let us not forget indigenous communities. Let us not forget what happened on the reservations. So I think that the challenge is that we need to come up with a set of impacts that don't identify who it was, who those groups were, because we have a very, very conservative Supreme Court. This is not the era to be taking lawsuits all the way up the flagpole and hope that you're going to get some sort of socially progressive outcome. And so we really do need to think about social equity, not just in terms of justice involved, but the families, the immediate families of those that were justice involved, and ways to write criteria that speak to the disproportionate impact without making it about gender or color. Not because it isn't, but because we know it's not going to be defensible when these lawsuits happen. And they are going to happen, and this is one of them. It's not the end of it, and we need to be smarter than that when we write policy.
Well said, you guys. Well said.